Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are author, director Amon Kabatchnik and Ann Magnuson, a performer who works in New York and LA. Amon Kabatchnik was born and raised in Israel. He came to the United States as a student, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Theater and Journalism from Boston University, and then an MFA from Yale School of Drama. Amnon is a member of the Actors Studio in New York, and he's taught theater classes at SUNY, Ohio State, Stanford, and Florida State. So why did you come to the US instead of the UK?
To the US?
Instead of the UK?
Oh, no. The US have had quite a reputation in the field of theater. But more than that, I had an uncle who lived in Lowell, Massachusetts, near Boston.
Oh, yes.
And he was instrumental in my leaving my little Israel, very little at the time, and coming to this country to study.
Well, you were interested then in theater.
I came as a journalism major, but I have taken some theater courses at BU because of a personal interest. And to make a long story short, the two chairmen of both departments, journalism and theater, came into an agreement about me that I'll major in both fields at the same time. So my BS, my bachelor's degree, is in both fields, journalism and theater.
Oh, so that's why you can teach in both fields too. Did you go directly from Boston to off-Broadway to directing?
No. They recommended that I would go to the Yale School of Drama for my next degree, Master of Fine Arts. So I went to the Yale School of Drama as a directing major.
I see.
And after 3 years of hard work, I came to New York.
And then were you directing plays at Yale? They have you direct plays?
Oh, yeah, it's quite a program. It's an excellent program in which I've taken acting classes and, of course, directing. I directed a thesis production to get my degree. It's the whole works, really.
So you're really prepared. Yeah. And when you were so prepared that when you came off to work off Broadway,
I don't know about that.
Well, you got all kinds of awards.
Well, I made my transformation. First, it was a matter of good timing. I came and I called T. Edward Hambledon, was the artistic director of the Phoenix Theater downtown in New York, and he was a Yale graduate. So I called to ask for a piece of advice. He was so used to people asking him for a position that when I met him, he sort of interviewed me for a position. And he suggested that Tyrone Guthrie, the director, who was our idol at Yale at the time.
Yes, I would think so. Everyone's idol, Tyrone Guthrie.
Was coming to direct Mary Stuart for the Phoenix, and there was a slight possibility that I would become his assistant. So when I left the interview, I called the school, I called the dean, asked to send a letter about me, and maybe that worked, I'm not sure. But the following week when I called, they asked me to come down. I met tall Guthrie, who is about 6'6", he was about 6'6", and lo and behold, I became his assistant, almost upon arrival in New York City.
Oh, what a break. Yeah. That's a real theater break.
That was a wonderful transformation from the educational institution to the professional theater.
And also, I think the idea that someone from the Yale School of Drama knew how you had been trained and knew what you could do, so they could go to bat for you, right?
Yes, they did. And it just worked out.
It
was
worked
wonderful.
out great, and you learned, of course, you were probably taking
It was
notes.
an unforgettable experience with Guthrie on Mary Stuart, with Eva Le Gallienne, a famous actress at the time, as
Wow.
Queen Elizabeth, and Irene Worth from England as Mary, Queen of Scotland. And behind the scenes, of course, during rehearsal, there was sort of an invisible competition between the two actresses, which fed actually into the play, because the play is a clash between Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary. And so
And they were actually bickering backstage.
Backstage there was that thing, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. I stayed with the Phoenix to work on one additional play with Tony Richardson, the director.
Oh, fantastic,
I know, he
too.
came from England, and he did a double bill by UNESCO, The Chairs and the Lesson, with Eli Wallach being in the chairs, playing an 80-year-old man at the time, and he was a young man, or youngish at the time. And it was, again, another wonderful, wonderful experience.
And Tony Richardson was so great. He loved the theater. And here, the first thing I asked you is why you came to the U.S. instead of the U.K., and there you were working with people.
Two gentlemen from Great Britain.
I know.
A great question, yes.
Well, that's very good.
It's all happened.
Now I'm going to ask you, what brought you to California? You were being so successful and doing so much off-Broadway. And what kind of plays were they?
First I received a wonderful letter from Guthrie, through which I received my first summer directorial positions, and I directed in New Hampshire and for three summers, many commercial plays like musicals and thrillers and comedies that at Yale they wouldn't touch at the time. But it was, again, sort of moving into other areas. Off-Broadway, I directed my first play off Broadway was an original play about Van Gogh, which we called Vincent.
Oh, yes.
And fortunately, we got some really wonderful reviews about it. It led to my directing an unknown play by Chekhov, which was adapted for me by a friend from Yale, and we called it A Country Scandal. It was found after Chekhov's death. He submitted it to a famous actress in Russia at the time. He was only 21 years old, and she rejected it. So the play was never done in his lifetime. He put it in a drawer. It was found, was adapted for me. It was too long, cannot be done as is. And again, we called it A Country Scandal, and we found ourselves with a major discovery off Broadway, a newly found Anton Chekhov play.
Fantastic,
Yes.
and you directed it.
I directed, yes.
Okay, now what brought you to California? Because here you are talking about like the cream of the crop, right?
Well, I directed off-Broadway at a number of universities.
Yes,
I taught acting
yes,
and
I
directed a
know
number
you
of
were
universities.
teaching. Did you come here to teach?
I came here because of family ties. I have a daughter who lives here, a budding actress, by the way, a son who lives near San Francisco, who is in the computer area.
Perfect place
So
for him.
the West Coast became my magnet. I mean, family.
Did you teach here at all in California?
Not in California, at Stanford University, but that was a while back.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And then what about Israel? Do you go back and forth to teach
I went to Israel after directing a number of plays off Broadway. I got the call from the Habima National Theater in Israel. It was a wonderful thing to come back to your hometown, directing plays for the Habima Theater with some of literally the greatest actors of the century, really are.
Were they?
Who came from Moscow to Israel, established the Habima Theater, and here I direct plays with Hannah Rovina, the leading actress, the first lady of the Israeli theater, worldwide famous, and other actors, Bartonov, Finkel, and others, whose name here will not be known, but they were known kind of internationally a while back.
But if you know theater, you're going to read about those people.
Yes,
And you will read about
yes,
those people.
Yes, definitely.
And talking about reading, I know you published 4 books in 3 years. And was it all done
this
here?
was since arriving,
So you were very busy.
Since arriving in Santa Monica,
And one of them was Blood on the Stage.
Blood on the Stage, which began with the first one in the series, Blood on the Stage, 1900 to 1925, covering plays, productions that were produced during that era. And we are talking about plays of crime and punishment, melodramas, thrillers, psychological thrillers, and so forth, that were produced in that era, and I followed through with 1925 to 50, and the latest book is 1950 to 75.
And what does it cover the whole play, or what does it tell us?
It covers a synopsis of the play.
Yes.
It covers the production elements, actors, directors, theaters. It covers such items, whether it was made into a movie or a television show or an opera, and I would cover that. And reviews, the reception by scholars and critics. And then sometimes there are some special features as well. So all
the actors,
and sometimes there's something that happened behind the scenes, or a special feature concerned with the play or its aftermath. And so all these are covered in here in a chronological basis from 1950 leading to 1955.
Only things that had blood on the stage, kind of like horror movies?
Some horror, whodunits, psychological thrillers, and such similar plays of crime and punishment. It's dedicated, that's why it's called Blood on the Stage.
Right.
It's dedicated entirely to the study of such plays in this genre.
Well, you're talking about studies. Could they use this in a college class as a
perfect.
textbook?
It's perfect for a class text.
And then what about for acting classes too?
Absolutely. And it has, many of the plays covered are also long forgotten. They were simply gone, long forgotten. It so happens that I have the script in my own personal collection. I've been a collector of these.
A lot of these? Or?
Yes, a lot of these.
I see.
And that would help me to create this book because of my own collection of plays in this genre. And I went, of course, to New York, to the Lincoln Center, Library of the Performing Arts. I went to Cornell University, to their library, and did my research to create this book.
Did you talk to anyone, actors or directors, who were involved in any of these plays? Were you able to talk to people personally?
As a matter of fact, last year, I was called to New York to direct Ladies in Retirement, which is a Gothic thriller from 1940. And this was a revival, the first revival in New York. And the plays covered in the second volume, the 1925 to 1940. So I directed the play that I've already covered in one of my books.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you came to tell us about it, because it's just something that people don't even know is out there, that they, if they're really into thrillers, these are like novels to read, right?
Yes, these are, absolutely. They're very exciting plots. I think that's what drew me to it. The plots are very strong.
Right.
You know, they're well-made plots with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right. Interesting characters, wonderful development, and some surprise endings as well.
And I thank you, Amon Kabatchnik, for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with actress, performer, Ann Magnuson. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with actress, performer, singer, songwriter, and my favorite part of her career, artist, Ann Magnuson. She was born and raised in Charleston, West Virginia, and received a BFA in theater and cinema from Denison University, and then went on to study in London. In 1978, she went to New York City and interned at the Ensemble Theater. Ann was a part of the 80s explosion downtown. I saw her perform at the Mud Club, Danceteria, and CBGB's when we used to go with Andy Warhol. Do you remember those days? And she's been a performer with Eric Bogosian, Joey Arias, and as I say, as an artist, she's been with Kenny Scharf and Keith Haring, has written for them, they've written for her, they've done art shows together. And she came to her senses and moved to LA, finally, right. Where she's got not only been in a lot of films, but she's got, I don't know, a big career out here. She's been seen with Malkovich, David Bowie, River Phoenix and Samuel Jackson in the big screen and on TV. And She's worked on the stage. I could go on and on, but I think we want to talk to her. Did you come from a show business family?
Well, my family really wasn't into it professionally. My mother was very much into little theater, the community theater.
Did she act in it?
Oh, yes.
Oh, she did?
Yes, so she got me into it. So in a way, there was a little Mama Rose going on there, maybe more than I'd like to admit.
Then you really remember maybe, too. It felt so natural.
Well, I know that it was fun, and I've always liked the community of it. The acting part, the part between action and cut is kind of the annoying part. And the part I like is getting to meet people and going to interesting new places and the research that you do around a role.
Well, so you probably like the performing better if you're on stage and seeing the people in front of you rather than on in a movie, in a film.
Well, there's two, there are apples and oranges, and I like both apples and oranges, but yes, the immediacy of a live audience is much more gratifying.
But we talked about so many different things that you did. How did you decide what you were going to follow? What path would you take?
Well, I think a lot of what I've done has picked me. And I was interested always in writing as a child and putting on shows and make-believe.
Oh, you did?
And storytelling.
Yeah.
So I guess everything I do is just a tributary of the greater river of storytelling. And when I was doing things in the Lower East Side, that was all theater-oriented. I majored in theater, but I wasn't interested in doing, the sort of regular straight theater. I was far more interested in the avant-garde and interested in rock and roll and the downtown scene and the art world. And sort of where all those disciplines connect is in performance art or in experimental theater.
Well, you talk about that, and you talk about being a little bit avant-garde and that it's off base, but do you think it's become mainstream now?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like totally changed.
Absolutely.
And when you were, talk a little bit about the 80s in the Lower East Side, when we used to hang out with Warhol and all those artists.
Yeah, those were exciting times. In fact, Kenny Scharf and I are going to be curating an art show at a wonderful little gallery. Well, it's not very little. It's a pretty major gallery called Royalty in Culver City.
Oh, I know Royalty,
and it's
yeah.
called East Village West.
Oh, perfect.
And we're going to bring back those times to a certain degree. And it's connected with the big Getty show, Pacific Standard Time. So we're connecting the Eastern Standard Time with Pacific Standard Time.
And Kenny lives out here now?
Yes, well,
back and forth?
He goes back and forth from here in New York.
And you go back and forth?
I don't really. I used to when I kept my apartment on Avenue A, but I got kicked out of it.
Avenue A. No one would live down there, right? Now it's like, we want Avenue A, B, C.
Yes, well, it's become...
we want the alphabet.
It's become the hipster Disneyland.
Exactly.
So it was time to get out, way before I even got out. But I held on tight to my rent-stabilized apartment. But the best thing that actually happened to me was that they kicked me out.
Oh, dear.
They got private investigators to find people with rent-stabilized apartments who really weren't living in New York, so...
Yeah. Well, you had to go back and forth. That was a great time, and the 80s was a fantastic time for all the artists who were beginning and who now have found really mainstream life.
Some have, or have families in suburbia and,
that's pretty
and grandchildren.
mainstream.
Yeah, that's about as mainstream.
How do you
as
stay on the edge? Is there a way to stay on that cutting edge?
Stay poor.
Oh, that's the way it is?
Do completely uncommercial, unmarketable art, and you will stay on the edge.
And do we have very much of that anymore?
Oh yeah, I think there's quite a bit of it, but you don't hear about it because there aren't as many alternative press outlets. However, with social media and the internet, you can hear more about it.
That's what I was thinking. When you were talking about doing a show at Royalty, will your work be in it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have
because I love the assemblages that you do.
Thank you. Oh, I'm glad you like that.
Yeah, and tell us about that.
Well, I started doing art back in, let's see, I had the first and only show so far in Joshua Tree, where I have a place. And it was the idea was to make 30 pieces of art in 30 days, so you had to work fast.
Oh.
And the vibe out in Joshua Tree is very much like the East Village, and that anything goes, and that you don't have a lot, you're not making things for money, you're making things for fun and just for expression. And that vibe is also in Memphis, where I made the film Woman's Picture.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you
Yes.
about, because you've worked on a lot of the next question, independent films. You
There's
worked
that fly again.
Oh, did you get him?
No, but we have to make a Yoko Ono-like film about that fly that's been haunting us.
All right, if he comes by, we'll hit him again. You worked with Greg Araki in Kaboom.
Yes, well, I got cut out, but I'm in the DVD extras, apparently.
Oh, dear. I had Greg on the very first time he made a film.
Oh, wow,
It was
really?
unbelievable,
Well-
because no one really knew him.
Well, this director that I've been working with in Memphis, Brian Pera, he's very much like, you don't know him now, but he's really talented and incredibly intelligent. And he's made a really interesting film that's going to be at Outfest on Monday and Saturday.
And it's called Woman's Picture.
Woman's Picture, and it's a contemporary riff on the women's pictures from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and involves 3 women, very, very kind of like a nod to Robert Altman. And I know Brian is a big Robert Altman fan, as I am too. And I am one of the women, and I appear in the other stories on television because I'm a home shopping club hostess.
Oh, so you get to be in the other people's houses from your character.
Yes.
Oh, and tell us what's her name? I forgot
Her name is Miriam, and this Woman's Picture is really the beginning of a 10-year project that Brian has envisioned, where he is going to do a series of shorts that create a universe of characters that are all connected to the women and the Women's Picture, and then it just builds and builds and builds, and it's all going to be through the internet, and they're going to be shorts, and we shot another short last month called Rose, which was 2 years earlier than what you see in the film.
But
Woman's
the film
Picture.
Woman's Picture is a full-length film.
Yes, it's a full-length film.
And it
It's
has
3
great
sections.
stars. Tell us who's in it.
Well, Calpurnia Adams, who is an amazing transgendered person and a beautiful artist, and her story is about a woman who comes back to her home and in Memphis to her mother, who she hasn't seen for 10 or 15 or 20 years. And she comes back to the home where she grew up as a young boy, but she's coming as a glamorous young woman. The second story is called Ingrid, and it features Amy LaVere, who is a fantastic musician out of Memphis. And she plays, that one is very interesting. And the less I say about it, the better, because it's great for it to unfold, as there's a lot of surprises and twists and turns in that story. And then my story is next. And all of the stories are about women and identity and the sense of being trapped in former identities and finding a way out of that, and yet finding themselves, compromised even in their new identities.
Is it totally scripted?
It was scripted, but Brian was very, very liberal in terms
Because
of improv.
it sounds like conversation. It sounds like when you see it, that you're just talking to each other, and that you are like working off of what the other person said.
We did do a lot of improv, and I got to do a lot of improv as the home shopping hostess.
Yes, tell us about that. I love the way you hold your hands up and you talk. And
Well,
you're
that comes from
selling...
all the ballet I took as a child, right?
Right.
Well, it was so fun because he would say, now look at this. We have this fantastic new fruit that has just come in, and we only have 5 of them.
Yes, and you were
for
like
$9.95,
stroking it.
And look how beautiful that is. That is a beautiful spherical shape. It's got heft. It's got odor. It's just a fantastic item. And we've only got 5 minutes to sell them all, and they're all for $9.99. No, we're going to give them to you for $1.99.
So he didn't script that. You went ahead and did a lot
I just
of that.
started riffing,
Yeah,
and
because it looked like it.
It was fun.
It looked like you were really great and having a great time. But then, did the costumes help?
I'm going to.
Oh,
fan
you're
myself.
so lucky. Yes, get rid of that
fan.
fly.
That has a little bit of sandalwood in it. We'll have to talk about the perfume.
Yes, so
And
tell us what you were selling perfume on.
I was selling perfume, and each story in Women's Picture has perfume as the subtext. And Brian is a very well-known blogger on perfumes, as well as being a novelist and a filmmaker. But he has created, Andy Tower, who's a Swiss perfumist.
T-A-U,
perfumier,
right?
T-A-U.
Yes,
T-A-U-E-R.
Yeah.
And he has a company called Tableau de Parfum, and they've developed this prototype for Miriam, which is my character's name. And eventually each character will have their own perfume, but they're going to have a big launch in October
Let me have a little sniff,
Yeah.
sniff.
It's meant
Did
to
they
be-
give you
it's-
things to try?
They will later in October when we do the big launch. But it's made to be a vintage smell that harkens back that sense of an other world from
Heirlooms
the 40s,
and-
like your grandmother's odor not her odor.
Your grandmother's odor that
yeah.
you used to say, oh, that's my grandmother when you smell
yes.
the scarf.
Yes, and that's a lot of what inspired Brian to do women's picture.
What about the costuming?
The costuming from myself was furnished by Peter Cohen, who has designed this beautiful outfit that I actually wore last month as Greta Garbo in a musical called The Seduction of Ingmar Bergman that the band Sparks.
Oh, you did. So has he been making all of your clothes, or
Well,
does he do costumes all the time, or?
He doesn't really do costumes. He's
Yeah.
provided wardrobe for me on a few occasions, and he is credited as the costumer for me, like Miss Magnuson's wardrobe by Peter Cohen, very much like Adrian or Edith Head. We wanted it to have that feel of old Hollywood.
Well, I think we've covered it all. We've covered your costumes, your perfume that you send. We've killed the flies. And
Okay.
no, we haven't. He's still here.
Maybe the perfume.
But we thank you so much. It's so good to see you again.
good to
It's
see
been
you
so
too.
long.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to JAQUINN1@AOL.com, the email. And go and see Ann Magnuson at Red Cat and on any stage you can find.
Go to annmagnuson.com or go to my Facebook fan page and we'll let you know about everything that's going on.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.